Welcome to Hashtag Gen Z. I'm your host, Megan Grace. Hey there, this is episode 31 of Hashtag Gen Z. We're continuing our exploration of some of the concerns of Generation Z. We've chatted about voting in government, the environment, expression, and money. So it's natural that we tackle another biggie, career development and jobs. This somewhat stems from last episode where I chatted with Anna Kubiak, a member of Generation Z and a finance professional, about Generation Z's views on money and financial perspectives. Generation Z's desire for financial stability is linked to their concerns about career development and job searching. Career preparedness and landing a good job is at the top of minds of many of Generation Z, and not just those recently graduating. Dabbling in various industries and types of work is happening at earlier ages with generation. This generation. Many are interning at younger ages, and some are even trying their hand at entrepreneurship and business as early as middle school and high school. So there are many angles we could explore for this topic. So I enlisted the help of a friend and career development professional. Dr. Monica Marcellus-Fachman is the owner and founder of Sheldrake Consulting, a career coaching and consulting company. Monica is a certified professional resume writer, career coach, and Myers-Briggs leadership consultant. She started her company because she saw too many women floundering in the job search process. They were underselling their skills and experiences. She helps clients find their unique stories in their careers so they can get unstuck and pivot to their next big thing. She provides resume and cover letter writing, interview coaching, and candid feedback focused on leadership development and career advancement. In addition to her work as a career coach and consultant, she's an adjunct faculty member at Grand Valley State University. She devotes her free time, yes, there's air quotes around that, to reading, writing, hanging out at the beach, and volunteering for the St. Baldrick's Foundation, which funds cutting-edge childhood cancer research. I'm very excited to be joined by my friend Monica today. I've been really lucky to learn from Monica for a few years now. She is just an absolute superstar in the career and job search development area. And her work has not only been beneficial to me, but the many people that she works with. And I'm actually going to welcome Monica and have her introduce herself. So Monica, welcome and thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Megan, and hi, Megan's listeners. Thank you so much for the invitation. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Monica Fochtman, and I am a certified professional resume writer and career coach. And I love helping people search for something new. And so that's really everyone. And I love helping people find their unique career awesome and then translating that onto paper. So whether that's resumes and cover letters, and yes, you need a cover letter, and we can talk about that, and also in interview answers and in networking. And once you find your story and find your awesome, your strategy and your search just gets so much easier and so much faster. And I love helping people do that.
So Monica, you're not only just so knowledgeable in the career search and job search space, but you're also a parent to Generation Z. And I think that's an important lens that you bring to this, not only through your professional work, do you interact with people that are job searching within like the young adult population age, but you live with Gen Z at home.
I do, yes. So I am an Xer, a Gen Xer, raised by boomers, and I am parenting Gen Z. So, but yes, I bring, I hope, an interesting perspective. And, in doing some research and, getting caught up myself and reading about Gen Z, it was so fun because I was like, oh, yes, my son Connor does that. Oh, yes, that's a priority for my son Luke. So, yes, I am surrounded by Gen Z all day, every day. And
especially in these times.
Yes. Oh, my goodness. Yes. Quarantine. As I come to you from my basement, because that's the place with the best Wi-Fi, while my Gen Z kids are doing school online.
So timely to have this conversation, especially as we're thinking about, I know that you've probably experienced this in your work, how the pandemic has changed so much of the job climate not only in the day-to-day work that we do in the environments we work in, but how people are searching for jobs. And I think maybe in some ways it's expedited some of the things that were a long time coming. But I would love to get into just really looking at, from your perspective, what are some of the trends that we're seeing right now related to the job market and career development, and especially related to young adults and recent graduates?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, so the first thing that I would offer is a word of advice, and that is to take heart, and that doing all of this anytime is hard work. And looking for a job, especially if you are changing industries or thinking about changing careers, doing that in a normal time is hard work, and it's a full-time job. So to do it with a pandemic on top of that, it's a lot. So to take heart and give yourself some grace, because this is not easy. Trends that we are seeing and that I think will continue are longer interview processes. So companies are doing more screening up front. So whereas, pre-pandemic, you might have had 3 interviews, 4 maybe, now searchers are experiencing 5 to 8. Almost all of them are on Zoom. Some of them are one way, in that a company would have used some sort of software video interviewing program where you record yourself, and you're talking to yourself, answering the questions. And then once that has gone to the company, and they screen and filter, then you would get in front of a live person, possibly, 2 to 3 times, before you even get to the final decision maker. So seeing lots of processes that are taking longer, because of the technology that's being used, but also because of the pandemic.
So that's really interesting that you bring up one-way interviewing, because a few years ago, as we were starting to get into Gen Z as our prime, new graduate age group, we were like, what are some of the things we might see happen with job searching? And we were kind of starting, my research partner and I were starting to get curious around this idea of video resumes and video profiles, which are like portfolios, which not like I'm a video maker or I am a filmmaker of any capacity, but Gen Z being very comfortable in turning in a video interview. So I think that that's going to be an interesting intersection and something that we'll keep an eye on. But I think that's so fascinating that you brought that up.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. And, the beauty and the fun of Gen Z is they are familiar and comfortable with that kind of technology and willing to take those risks. I would encourage a candidate to think carefully about doing that. I'm not saying don't do it, but you also, in any search, you want to make sure that your materials, your pitch, your brand, how you are presenting yourself matches the industry and the position that you want to go into. A lot of times as job seekers, resume writers, we reflect the language of the position that we are leaving, which is normal. That makes sense. But it's more important, especially now with the market being what it is, even more important that you reflect where you want to go next. And so if you're applying for a job or an industry or a company that is more entrepreneurial, that is very tech focused, fast paced, it would make perfect sense that you might submit a video portfolio. If you found yourself in an industry maybe that was less involved in the tech space, a video portfolio might not make as much sense. So you want to match where you want to go.
I love that the mindset that you bring to this, Monica, with this idea of career searching as forward thinking and not just highlighting what you're currently doing. I think that transcends not only the different types of industries that people are looking into, but different generations, different ages, that just because you're not a young person right out of high school or college doesn't mean that you can't explore new industry. And I know you do a lot of work with industry hoppers and people trying to get new experiences in new ways. But I think that mindset of like, write how you want to, or formulate your materials in a forward thinking, future oriented mindset is really important. So I appreciate you bringing that up. We talked a little bit about what's going on in the job market right now, how that might be suited to Gen Z or some things we might need to be concerned about. But I would really, from your perspective, what do you think are some of the career strengths of Generation Z? So when you think of this unique generation, again, you've got two case studies at home, but I know you interact with Gen Z in other capacities. What do you think are some of the strengths that are unique to Generation Z that they're going to bring to the job market and to careers?
Yeah, well, I think Gen Z is so fascinating because they are this mix of freedom and flexibility, as evidenced by their comfort with technology. They're not on Facebook, they're on Snapchat, and they're not afraid. One of my sons uses Snapchat the way that I would use text. So there's this comfort level, there's a willingness to take risks with that. They are also, though, deeply committed to stability and doing good work that works for them, and for their families and for the environment. And I think that's a wonderful, unique blend that they will bring into the workforce. And the challenge for them is how to talk about that, right? And how to demonstrate that they can do that. And again, looking for that match between them and where they're going. Authenticity really matters to Gen Z. And so as a company or as an organization doing the hiring, they're going to be looking for you to be and present as authentic so that there is a match between them and you. Gen Z very much, as much as they want that freedom and flexibility, they are also looking for that stability. I mean, these are kids who saw their parents really struggling in 2008, 2009, 2010. And so, yes, they're risk takers, but risk takers with their own ideas and the impact they want to make, but not necessarily risk takers with going into unknowns that won't be stable for them.
I really like how you categorize this idea of risk taking. I think that in some cases it is a calculated risk. Like they're very good at calculating, if I make this step, it might be risky. However, I've kind of created some contingencies, which I love about this generation. I think that is in some ways an underlying form of innovation, that they're willing to think so creatively and so differently. And I think that that's a big thing they're going to bring to the job market, that employers, ready or not, they're coming, they're already here. And it's a matter of if employers are going to be willing to harness that spirit. I think the mindset of adaptability, but with this idea of stability is going to be really unique. Like they want flexibility in their work, but they want to know they have a job. So I think there's just so much that is in, and we're seeing this more and more as Generation Z grows up and starts to inhabit new spaces and new institutions. Like we just saw this huge thing with the stock market and Reddit and how social media and Gen Z can create a change. I think that we're about to be on the brink of a lot of workplace hiring and just work in general changing as Generation Z becomes this new employee population. Something I want to touch on a little bit, if you don't mind if we go there, is this idea of entrepreneurship, because it's kind of linked to the innovation and the risk-taking that you mentioned. Entrepreneurship, you know it, you are an entrepreneur, is not your traditional career path. So how can we help a generation that is heavily interested in entrepreneurship, whether they go and start their own business or they want to dabble in entrepreneurship while maybe keeping a full-time job?
Yeah, and I love that you asked that question. Thank you. Because my husband and I were actually just talking about this the other night, and he said, well, you're an entrepreneur. And I said, no, I'm not. I'm a small business owner. Because my own mindset about entrepreneurs are, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Lady Gaga, right? I mean, she has continued to reinvent herself and now has an incredibly beautiful cosmetics line. Jennifer Lopez, Oprah, right? Those are kind of more traditional, how I think of entrepreneurs. But really, entrepreneurship is a mindset. And if you are willing to take risks, to be creative, and to solve problems, then you are an entrepreneur. And so, for example, using myself, my own small business, I saw too many people, usually women, but I saw too many people underselling themselves in their experience. And I said, okay, I can help with that. I'm very good at seeing patterns, themes, and relationships, and I'm an excellent writer. So I can teach people how to do that for themselves. Well, so then on a very basic level, I'm an entrepreneur. And I would suggest that that's how Gen Z thinks of themselves as well. And so it's not necessarily that every Gen Z person will go out and start their own business. They certainly can, and a lot of them will. It's more about the mindset that they bring to whatever space they are in. And that can be a huge asset to a company, to an organization, because Gen Zers are not afraid to get in there and ask questions. And to your point about, stability and long term, they're willing to stick it out, because they want that stability and authenticity. And then in terms of them starting their own businesses, I think we will see more and more of that. There will be, I think, more small gigs combined with long-term employment. I do not. No, I was actually, yeah, I was, and it'll be, I don't want to say smaller because that sounds, maybe a little condescending, and that's not what I mean at all. Maybe even more niche. So, for example, I was getting my haircut last month, and I overheard the woman, across the building because pandemic, and she had a very loud voice. But she was talking about her daughter who's a high schooler. She was a sophomore, and was starting a side business on Etsy making recycled stationery. And I was sitting there and I was like, wow, that is the most Gen Z thing ever. She's a sophomore in high school. She sees a need, right? She wants to reduce waste. She wants to do something creative. So she's going to start a business on Etsy. I think we will continue to see more and more of that.
Absolutely. And I think that to kind of the point that you're talking about of entrepreneurship existing within organizations, I think that is going to be, and I think the official term is called intrapreneurship, where you are tasked, where you're tasked with for those word sticklers out there like myself. I believe it's going to be something that organizations are really going to have a look in the mirror in terms of trust and autonomy, because what you ask of someone when you task them with entrepreneurship is essentially innovate our business. We support you, minimizing the risk of being the stereotype of a lonely entrepreneur, like waiting to make their big break. But this idea of having leadership put trust in young people and put trust in their employees to innovate something, to create something. But I loved the way that you framed entrepreneurship, and I think it characterizes Generation Z so well. This idea of seeing a problem and being creative in solving the solution, and finding a way, whether or not they make millions or if they just change the world for good, the motivation to improve things, whether that is within their own communities or their work, is something that I think organizations and employers really need to start paying attention to. Because in my opinion, it's wasted energy if we don't allow these creative minds to be put to action in certain ways. Like the sophomore that you brought up, I think this is just probably the first step in product development for that sophomore, and what they're going to be able to do with this. You start with stationery. Okay, what else can I innovate and recycle and create into more sustainable or regeneration of materials? So I love this. I'm very excited to see where this goes with Generation Z. I think another thing you've brought up a few times that I would love to hear more about, because this is likely a conversation that's bolstering the confidence of Generation Z out there. But if you're an employer or someone that's looking to hire, I think we need to pay attention. But Monica, from your perspective, let's talk about the role of authenticity, not only for those that are job searching, so maybe our young adults that are job searching, but what authenticity means for organizations in terms of retention of Generation Z.
Yeah, thank you. And it's related to what we were just talking about too, about giving entrepreneurs space. setting them with a task, but then also getting out of their way so that they can do it in a way that works for them, right? And that is authentic, right? If you say, in your hiring process, in all of your materials, we value innovation and creativity, and you'll have the freedom and flexibility to solve problems. But then once the Gen Zer gets into your organization and you're micromanaging every part of that process, well, then you don't value innovation and creativity, right? So from an employer perspective, companies are really going to have to look internally and do some hard work to make sure that how they actually operate matches what they have said at the outset on the recruiting side. And I can say this, parenting two Gen Z kids, they can sniff falsehood and fakeness from a mile away, and they will call you on it so quick, and then they'll walk. So for example, our younger son in kindergarten figured out that the prize bucket thing, right? Like you got to move your clip up and down the rainbow depending on your behavior, which I have all kinds of problems with. But as soon as he figured out that the prize at the end of that was an eraser, he was done. He was like, I am out of here. Like, forget this, lady. There is no way I'm doing that for an eraser. Now, had the prize at the end been the freedom to choose, who to sit next to at lunch, or 10 minutes of recess, or more PE, or, having some say in, well, maybe we can do reading and then math, right? Had that been the prize, quote unquote, he would have bought in hook, line, and sinker. So Gen Z very much wants to have a say in what happens to them, because they trust themselves and they know that they can make contributions.
I love the eraser example, because when you're telling me that, I was like, that teacher just didn't know how to motivate. Like, they misaligned with the youth motivation of today. Like, material goods just don't, like, sure, everybody wants a nice something or another, and they're not going to say no to a Starbucks card, but like an eraser is not going to do it for a 5-year-old. Like, what is it that motivates kids today and young people today? So I think that, that's a huge piece of it.
Yeah. And Gen Z in the workplace, so the older Gen Zers, starting to graduate and go into the workplace, a millennial was, some, not all, of course, right? But a millennial might have been wooed by a ping pong table and a beer keg and casual Fridays, right? That's not going to do it for Gen Z. They would much rather have the freedom and flexibility to determine their own schedule, or a comp day once a quarter to do what they want with. Gen Z also very much cares about their community. So again, for example, our sons, one of our younger son plays on an elite travel team, travel soccer. Well, the club that he is a part of is very, very committed to giving back to the community. And they do canned food drives at Thanksgiving. They do adopt a family at Christmas. In the spring, they all go down to the river and clean up. And everyone on the team participates in all of those, because they very much have bought into and care about giving back to the communities where they live.
I think that that's a great point to bring up, of this idea of community and how the workplace is, if you follow along with American sociology, there's a lot of people that are saying that the neighborhood is eroding, but the workplace is the new neighborhood. And I'm not saying like neighborhoods are falling like physically apart, but the relationships that matter are what used to be your neighbors and being best friends with your neighbors. And because you would live in the same house for 30 years and that really mattered. It's now the workplace. That is the community that people turn to, because they spend more time at work. And even in the after work hours, they might go to the gym with a coworker. They might go get a drink with a coworker, go out to lunch with a coworker. That the community within a working space is really important. And I think the role that authenticity plays in true relationship building within workplace communities is important to note. that I think Gen Z is going to look at some organizations and some businesses and say, okay, you said that you value diversity and inclusion, but it's just on your website and it's a really, really unwelcoming place otherwise. Or you say you value protecting the environment, but we don't even have a recycling bin. So, like, I think that they're going to try to sniff that out a lot, even earlier in the interview phase. And I think that that's important. So, I think if you have, do you have any advice for maybe our Gen Z job seekers that if they have some moral areas that they're passionate about? So we know we got a lot of environmentalists in the Gen Z group. What would you suggest to Gen Z job seekers in terms of sniffing out authentic practices in future employers? Like, how do you delicately and politely and professionally navigate that conversation in an interview or in the interview phase or the job search phase?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, I mean, the first step, of course, is research, right? Google is your friend here, and they certainly know that. But anyone can make a website look and sound fancy. The bigger question, to your point, is what's happening behind the scenes. And my answer to that is network. Ask questions. LinkedIn also. You have to be on LinkedIn. We can debate about the merits of it as a platform. It's here until somebody else invents a new one, which I'm sure they will. But for now, it's LinkedIn, and they need to be following people, connecting with them, and asking questions and doing their research before they even get into the interview, honestly, because that will help them filter out, companies or organizations that maybe aren't as authentic as what they are looking for, or even companies that aren't in industries that they're interested in. So that's the first thing. And then when you're actually in an interview, pay attention to what people say, of course. But even more important is the nonverbals and what people aren't saying. And, how are people interacting? How are people having and this is hard in a pandemic because things are virtual right now, but they won't be virtual forever. How are people interacting informally? What are they saying about their colleagues and supervisors on LinkedIn, on Snapchat? What a company says is important, of course, but the nonverbals and the sense of community and camaraderie matters, is a bigger tell to a potential employee.
Absolutely. I think your point on networking, I'm sure that you've experienced this as well. You kind of get a random LinkedIn request. You're like, who is this person? I personally love when people are like, hey, can I just have a cup of coffee and learn about your job? Like virtual cup of coffee these days. And even before the pandemic, I have a lot of people that don't live in my city. And I'm always going to say yes to that. Always. I mean, I work at a very small company, but I'm always willing to share about my work. And I'm always willing to, especially if there's someone that's interested in doing that. So I think Gen Zers, if you're listening, listen to Monica, get on LinkedIn and find people that work at your job. I think people are a lot more willing to share about their workplace experiences than you would imagine. And I've never, like, my fiance is an introverted guy, and he even always takes the request when someone wants to talk about like his job or how he got into it. And like, these are strangers that just want to know more about what he does. So even the most introverted people will do that.
I was going to say, I'm an introvert, and I'm happy to talk. There are very few people, honestly, who don't like to be asked about themselves or about their work. It's all about the ask. Right. And the beauty of LinkedIn is you can follow people before you connect with them. You want to use that connect feature very strategically. And when you do ask to connect with someone, to make a true connection. Hey, Megan, I see that you are a Gen Z expert and I am a Gen Zer. I'd love to chat with you for a half hour about ... right? To make a true connection and be specific in the ask. I don't connect with people, honestly, on LinkedIn who have not personalized the request. Even if they are a peer, a colleague, a potential competitor, like if you can't take 2 seconds to personalize the invite, I'm not interested in having you in my network.
And it takes one line of, hey, I met you here, or hey, I noticed we both are interested in X, Y, Z, whatever it might be. It does not take long, and it really does matter. So all those listening.
Yes. And for the new grads out there, groups on LinkedIn didn't take off the way that they had wanted them to. They're trying to resurge. Groups are more active on Facebook. But on LinkedIn, to use that alumni connection as well, right? It's, I would gladly connect with anyone from either of my alma maters. And if they say that, hey, we both went to Boston College, we both went to Michigan State, let's connect, right? That is an easy in that I think people underestimate.
Absolutely. And that's, I think, our recent graduates, another tool. Like now you and I are just nerding out about LinkedIn. We'll get back to Gen Z, I promise. If you're moving and you know that, say, you're moving from the Washington, D.C. area up to Boston, you can start looking at building a network of people in Boston. And that's a great spot. Like I live in Nashville. If there was ever a Chapman grad that was moving to Nashville and was like, I just want to connect with other alumni, I'd be like, oh my goodness, please come meet me here. Let's get lunch. Like there's so many people that are willing to help you. But there can be apprehension to think like, oh, is this weird for me to connect? Most of the time people, as you mentioned, Monica, like people want to help you. And people happily talk about their experiences. So sometimes we just have to be a little brave and bold in our first move, but do it politely.
Right. Right. And, I think that is a direct connect back to Gen Z's desire for authenticity. And, I think, they saw some inauthentic, really sketchy stuff, right? With the crash of 2008 and, the impact that had on their families and their parents. And then, the Me Too movement and Black Lives Matter. And I think all of that is directly connected to and influences their deep, deep desire for authenticity and true connection. So you can connect with people and have it still be real. And I would suggest that fear of, oh, this sounds fake, or, oh, this, doesn't feel good, that is self-imposed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think this is a good time to also talk about, because we've also started to talk about like reach out to people that you might be interested in talking to. We are both members of older generations that interact with Generation Z. And I think it's very clear that we're both big fans of Generation Z. But from your perspective, what do you think are some things members of older generations can be doing to support Gen Z at this kind of unique phase of their life of job searching, entering the job market for many of them for the first time, or maybe for a full-time professional time, or whatever that might look like? What do you think older generations can be doing to support our friends in Gen Z?
Well, first and foremost, I would challenge older generations, myself included, to become better listeners. There's very much a natural tendency to get defensive. And I think, I know that we do our children and Gen Zers in general a disservice by not listening to their lived experience. It is very, very different. It's different from my experience as an Xer and certainly from their grandparents' experience as boomers. The world is very, very different. And the pace at which things changed is phenomenally different from our own experience. So I would say the first thing is to really listen and to listen to understand, right? Not listen to respond. And then the second thing I would say is to invite Gen Z into helping you solve whatever problem might be a problem. Because that is authentic to Gen Z, and that garners trust and also can create stability for your organization. People across generations, but Gen Z especially, are much more likely to stick around if they have felt a level of investment in something. And if you have been invited to help solve a problem, that's certainly a way to garner investment and buy-in.
Absolutely. And I think something I want to plug that I have personally loved is mentoring Gen Z. whether or not it is officially stated that I'm your mentor and you are my mentee. I think everyone should have a mentor, whether or not you have the official define the relationship conversation. But I've been lucky enough to work with members of Generation Z, either as interns or students or truly formal mentoring programs. And that's such an important thing that if you have even just a little bit of time to give back to someone that's interested in your career field in a more ongoing basis, please do. Older generations, this is your opportunity to pass down all of your sage wisdom. But I've also learned so incredibly much from my mentees throughout the life that I've spent with Generation Z. I'm lucky to have a few current college interns for my job. And they're amazing. If you're listening, you three are wonderful, wonderful humans. And I learn so much from you all the time. But it's this willingness to go back and forth. And I think that goes back to your point, Monica, of listening and understanding and perspective taking, because I think where our society is at right now is we all need to be on the same team and we all need to coordinate our strengths effectively. So older generations need to understand what the younger generations are probably more skilled at. And we need to all do that together for where we're at. We can't save the climate or we can't save the world, the environment without everybody on board. So
in addition, to owning my own company and being a parent, I am also adjunct faculty and my students are Gen Z. Some are millennials, but more and more Gen Z. And, to your point about mentoring, I learned so much more from them than really I have taught them. They have taught me, and it's made me a better faculty member. My syllabus, for example, for one of the classes that I teach looks totally different now, the fifth time that I'm teaching it, than it did the first time. And it's because the students told me, well, this doesn't work. And so I listened, I got over my pride. I swallowed my pride a little bit and I actually listened to what they said. And now the course is so much better than it was the first time I taught it, 5 years ago.
Absolutely. And you've probably become a better instructor and faculty member because of your mindset around how can I learn from my students? And your students probably appreciate the heck out of it. The fact that you're willing to listen to them has probably created a more empowering learning environment for them.
I hope so.
We'll find them. We'll ask. Don't worry.
So if any of my students are out there, talk to Megan and tell her what you really think.
I'll pass it along in a nice way. Monica, this has been such an insightful and important conversation. I think that this is a great example of generations coming together to talk about how do we make things better for everyone within the lens of work. But I ask every single guest, regardless of if they're Gen Z or not, what their favorite thing about Generation Z is.
Well, so super biased, of course, because I am a parent of two Gen Z boys. They are absolutely delightful and funny. They are both incredibly quick-witted and smart, and they are not afraid. They don't suffer fools, right? And they are not afraid to say, well, that's dumb. I'm not doing that. And, as a parent, sometimes that's hard because I just need them to do stuff. But as an employer and as, someone who is going to witness the good that they are going to go do, that gives me so much hope. And I see so much promise in them because they are willing to stand in their own authenticity and call out others who are not being authentic.
Your sons sound like delightful human beings. So, and I know they're
pretty great.
I know they are. Their mom's pretty great too.
Oh, thanks.
Monica, this has been such a delight. I'm so glad to have spent time with a friend talking about clearly things that we think are very important. And I hope these messages resonate with anyone that was listening. But Monica, thank you so much for being here and sharing your true expertise in job searching, career development, and getting people work that they love. And as you say, finding their awesome. So thank you for being awesome. And I appreciate you being here.
Thanks. It was great to be here, Megan. Thank you.
This episode would not have been possible without the knowledge and insight shared by Monica. Monica, thank you for sharing your experiences and expertise. I think there's so many helpful strategies shared, not only that resonate with Generation Z, as they're focusing on career preparation, but for people across generations. What Monica brought to this conversation is years of experience in helping people find jobs they love, something that is a priority for Generation Z. What I appreciated is that Monica shared ways in which Generation Z can view job searching and career development as a two-way street, and to tease out elements of jobs and work that they most desire in companies or in freelance settings. For members of Generation Z working towards their dream career, know that it's possible, and there's many people, like Monica, who are there to help. And for members of older generations, it's a critical time to reflect and examine how the workplace is changing as Generation Z becomes a larger portion of the workforce. They're bringing a new set of interests and perspectives, skills, and values to organizations, and there's no time to waste. I'm not saying we need to toss everything out to accommodate for Generation Z, but it will be necessary to understand how organizations can be malleable to attract and retain Generation Z employees while balancing the unique characteristics of older generations. There's a lot to consider and a lot to explore and a lot to look forward to as Generation Z heads to work. Thank you for tuning into this episode. As always, if you enjoyed this episode, please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. We'll continue to discuss the important topics related to Gen Z in coming episodes. But if you have a topic you're interested in or a member of Generation Z that I need to chat with, please head over to my website, meganmgrace.com, or you can find me on social media and drop me a quick note. Thank you again for stopping by for this episode. Let's continue this conversation, and we'll chat soon.